Go, 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 go.
3, 2, 1, 4 tires.
Still there, inside.
What a jump! What a jump!
The track is wet. It's good.
Still there, clear.
3, 2, 1. Green flag, green flag.
Hey everyone, Dom Capalupo here from Jackson, New Jersey.
Sam Dooley, Troy, Alabama.
Hey guys, Stephen Ray, Twin Cities, Minnesota.
What's happening, guys? Wes Riddle from Raleigh, North Carolina.
All right, and we are back. The Four and Fuel podcast. We're back, baby. Back for another
Yes, sir.
run. Back for another run. Ready to finish the 2023 season strong. We are finally back from our hectic schedules. We've been out of commission for a while, but you know, every good thing needs a break, and it is time for some new beginnings.
I put out on Twitter, well, can we call it tweets anymore? I put out
Twitter, X, whatever.
I put out an X. All right. That just doesn't sound right. I put out a tweet. I was like, this is the greatest comeback of 2023. What's up? What's up, fellas? It's been a long time. Ready for, like Dom said, new beginnings. This will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point in the season right now too, because we've got the big bubble chase going on right now. Chase actually trying to go after it, and everything's ramping up right now in these last few races. It's going to be real close.
We definitely had a good time. It's great to be back and see everybody's faces again, but also just to know that we're going to have your support and viewership as we start kind of a new journey and a new path together, as well as we are preparing for a pretty exciting playoff year that's coming up. So definitely want to start strong here and end 2023 with a bang.
Yeah, we're looking to do episodes every week for the remainder of the season. Beyond that, obviously, we're going to get creative with it. We'll get there when we get there. But episode 1, really, it's all what's come down here. We're not going to be here for too long. Just going to do a quick recap of the bubble situation, get our takes on that. We'll give you our championship 4 as it stands right now. And then we'll really just get you guys into next week, let you guys enjoy the racing this week after today, and then we'll get into full force next week. Just want to let you guys know we are back. So, obviously, we have a very enticing bubble situation when it comes to the playoffs. Some big names outside of the playoffs right now, like Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Ty Gibbs, Daniel Suarez, AJ Allmendinger. Those are 5 household names, really, in the Cup Series that are staring at the outside of the playoffs. Meanwhile, out of nowhere, Michael McDowell is in the playoffs right now on points, and then you have Bubba Wallace. That shouldn't come as a surprise to many people. I think right now he's looking good. It could be McDowell versus the field behind him for this final playoff spot. That's what I'm thinking, Steve.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a couple of big stories that we can take away from this. One, how about the resurgence of Michael McDowell's career? I mean, was in Michael Waltrip Racing, was in the Toyota backfield, and then things just kind of took a tumble, was in start and park rides for a while, but now has solidly found a home with Front Row, and he's not just in the playoff field, he's 18 points above the cutoff line, so he's solidly found himself. I mean, we're 22 weeks into the year, with only a handful of races before the cutoff, and he is solidly inside the playoff bubble. Now, with that being said, he's 16th on the grid, so we get one of these guys, Ty Gibbs, AJ Allmendinger. We have a couple of road courses coming up. You always have to, look at Chase Elliott too. He's trying to bounce back from the leg injury. So speaking of Chase Elliott and his teammate Alex Bowman too, I think we really have to look at, we have 2 Hendrick cars that are outside of the playoff bubble, and we're really only fighting for 1 spot. So it's really going to be interesting over the next couple of weeks. Granted, Alex Bowman was leading the points at the beginning of the year, hit with that point penalty, had his own injury. So a couple of things have kind of, not helped them out through the year. But that's going to be fun to watch. And then as we close in on the next few races here.
Yeah, and how about 2311? I mean, they've been there since they've been, you know, creeping their way up front. We knew this was going to happen at some point. They've been improving since they started in 2021, and then went to 2 cars last year. Kurt Busch won in it. Bubba won a couple of times last year. So we knew this was going to happen, but just the consistency to come out of 2311 for the first time since they were brought together, that has a lot to do with the drivers, but also has a lot to do with the entire team as a whole, because they're really using their resources well. They seem like they're a well-run organization, top to bottom, and they're it's showing right now in the points because Bubba's plus 54 to the good right now, and then Reddick's got to win, so he's in too. So right now they've got both cars in the playoffs, and that is a huge step from last year, where I guess technically Kurt Busch did make the playoffs, but he gave up his spot, so they didn't have any playoff. They haven't had any playoff drivers yet. So if they could get 2 this year, that's a huge step up from 2311 this year.
Now they're definitely going to make it. Yeah, I don't see any reason how the 23 doesn't. The only thing with that team that scares me going into the playoffs is execution. They have the speed week in and week out. It's just the full team execution. If it's not the team, if it's not the pit crew, it's the driver that's making a mistake. And if it's not the driver making a mistake, it's the team on pit road making a mistake. So it's just execution with that team. And if they put that together, they could be a formidable force here in these playoffs. I really think so. The tracks lay out well for Bubba in the playoffs, and Tyler Reddick also could make a huge run. He almost honestly, if he doesn't have that bad luck at the beginning of the playoffs last year, Tyler Reddick's a threat to make the championship 4 and the 8 car last year. So I think Reddick could be a real dark horse this year. I've been saying it since before the season. Reddick's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs.
I think the same thing goes for Reddick too. Since we're talking about Bubba and how that whole 23 team has to put a race together, we can say the same thing about the 45 team too. They had that win at Coda, but since then, Tyler Reddick has had flashes of greatness. You know, he had the good run at New Hampshire, but really since then, that 45 team has shot themselves in the foot a few times. So I think as an organization, 2311 needs to come together. And if they can do that and lean on each other, the 45 team and the 23 team, I think both of those cars can go far in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. I know that we talked about the playoff bubble a minute ago. It's really intense at the moment. I think one thing that we got to worry about just for Bubba in the meantime is getting through 2 road courses. We know that that's not a strong suit, and we got to look at the guys that are outside right now, the playoff bubble, that are trying to get in, that excel at road courses. Obviously, McDowell's in at the moment. That's arguably the best style racetrack he could possibly have. So it's really going to help in his favor. But look at the guys, like I said, outside. We've got Chase Elliott. We've got Daniel Suarez, who won at Sonoma last year. We've got Justin Haley, who finished second at the Chicago Street Course race. We've got Austin Cindric, who's has a stellar road course background. And we're forgetting about Cindric. I mean, last year's Daytona 500 winner, sitting like 22nd or 23rd in points. But I mean, you go to a road course, and he's a guy that you're always talking about. We've got AJ Allmendinger, right? We've got Todd Gillen, who's not half bad on the road course. So I mean, there could be a surprise winner that kind of creeps up and sneaks their way into the playoffs, even with a win that could knock somebody like Bubba out, who, the road courses have never kind of worked in his favor. But and then Daytona, we have Daytona to end the playoffs. That's going to be another wild card too. We have no clue what's going to happen. So you got to watch Bubba. You got to watch McDowell. The playoff bubble, I know there's not that many spots, but it's going to be really intense seeing some of the talent that's outside right now try to fight their way in, because this year in particular, last year was definitely, we saw the field's diversity, but this year I feel like there's more opportunities for some of these guys outside to be able to pull off a win. And I feel like the parity just keeps growing more and more.
Now, Wes, with assuming Harvick and Keselowski get 2 of the point spots, who are your two guys that get those last two spots, barring no crazy winner?
That's a great question. It's really going to come down to, I feel like, strategy. A lot of how teams are going to work the stages and like breaking up and dividing when they're going to come down pit road and who's going to be staying out on the racetrack. McDowell's pretty comfortable, but I mean he's going to be up front in those road course races. I feel pretty confident that he's going to make his way in. He's also the kind of guy I feel like you go to a super speedway and he always finds himself at the end to be in the mix for the finish. You can't say that for a lot of other drivers. They might be up there for the win, but then they get involved in a wreck. And I feel like McDowell's always there in the picture somewhere, like in the first row, second row, third row. I feel pretty comfortable about McDowell. I'm on the fence about Bubba. I want to say that AJ Allmendinger could sneak his way in if he's able to capture a victory at one of the two road courses. And I'm not 100% sure if he can do it. To be honest, I'm actually sticking with Bubba. I feel like Bubba has really grown as a driver on road courses. He's definitely done a lot better. It's just not his strongest track, but I think that he'll be consistent enough the next few weeks to be able to maintain that point gap that he's built up. While McDowell grows upon his because his is a little bit closer at the moment right now to the 17th place. But Ty Gibbs too. I didn't even mention Ty. Ty's in the mix. He could definitely snag a win at one of the road courses. But I don't think the playoff bubble is going to change unless we see something dramatic happen in terms of like an engine failure or a crash.
Britt?
Yeah, so I think I Wes was right. McDowell very good on road courses, and I think that he'll have that consistency. One thing we're not talking about is we got Michigan, right? So, and that is a style of track that because Bubba won at Kansas last year. It's different, it's smaller, but it's still that same style racing. It's a lot of high line, crack the throttle, get right back into it. Just rip the wall basically. And Bubba was really successful at that. He won last year, so I think that will help him because he's been really good on basically every type of oval this year. He's been in there in the top 10, borderline top 5 everywhere. So I think that will help him. He's a good super speedway guy. And then road courses, if he can just manage, right? He doesn't have to go out there and get a top 5. He doesn't even have to get a top 10. Keep it top 15 for those two races. And the only thing is that I'm looking at AJ Allmendinger on the outside looking in with two road courses on the table. They're going to gamble. It's colleague racing. They gamble for wins. It's what they do. And at the point that they're at right now, I know they can point their way in, right? He's only 22 off the cut line, but you feel a lot safer if you've got a win. And I feel like they're one of those road courses. They are going to throw it all out there. They're going to go all in on one hand, and they're going to wreckers or checkers, because that's just the way that AJ drives too. AJ drives in such a way where he's quite aggressive. So I can see him getting in as well, because that's another good road course guy. Daniel Suarez, he picked up a win at Sonoma last year. Or the year before that, I can't remember, one of them. But yeah, and then of course Chase Elliott. We always talk about Chase Elliott at road courses. This year he's been off because he just hasn't had that groove to really get into the season. We're at a point now where he looks like he's kicking it a little bit more. He looks like he's getting more into his groove, and we're about to hit a couple of tracks that he's pretty good at. So he could grab a win there, and yeah, so it's like there's plenty of other names too, but like those are the main road course guys. And coming down to the end of this regular season schedule, there's a lot of road courses sitting there for the taking, and those can be wild cards almost as much as a Daytona or Talladega can be a wild card, just because it's so specialized that there's a lot of people that can't do it. So I that being said, I think Bubba gets in, and I don't really see I don't see McDowell falling out unless, like Wes said, there's a catastrophic something that happens somewhere and he loses a lot of points to the cut line. But if McDowell does fall out, I think it would be to an Allmendinger win, bumping him out, and then that would make it a lot harder fight for the bubble spot, because it's like a 30-point gap or 35-point gap between McDowell and Bubba. So the only way that I see McDowell not making it is either a catastrophic failure or Allmendinger picks up one of those road course wins.
Steve?
I think as I look at this, you guys make good points, but there is one dark horse that we haven't talked about last year, or for this year, who won last year, and that's Austin Dillon. And you think we get to the regular season finale, we're at Daytona, and he's going to be in the same scenario that he was in last year, where he has to win to get in, and he did that with the help of Tyler Reddick. Now his teammate being Kyle Busch, who sits comfortably inside the playoffs with 3 wins. Kyle Busch has nothing to lose. And as an organization, RCR has everything to gain from that. So they're probably, I'm sure Richard Childress is going to be up on the roof saying we have to get Austin into the playoffs. That's something to keep in mind too as we get closer and closer. I don't think these are necessarily great tracks for Austin coming up besides Daytona. He's not a super great road course racer. I think if we get to Daytona and he's not pointed his way enough, which he's way back behind Bowman, who's 42 out, and Dillon's even further behind that. So Dillon's in a must-win. So I think that's something to look at if you get to Daytona and there's still a spot up for grabs. Is he's going to go checkers or wreckers, bring home the trophy or the steering wheel type of driving. So I do see Bubba Wallace getting in. I think that's comfortable enough for him to be in, and I don't think we're going to see that many new winners. McDowell, I'd like to see get in, and especially he's got some good tracks coming up, but I just see another winner coming from out of the playoff bubble who's unfortunately going to bump him out. Now, of course, biased, I would love to see Chase Elliott get in, but he just isn't not the same anymore. And I don't think that it's really going to be enough unless he can win, but he just is not up front every week like he needs to be, and just hasn't been having that speed over the summer that team needs to show that they're a playoff team. So I don't think Chase Elliott makes it. I don't think Alex Bowman makes it. I would say Bubba Wallace, and then if we get to Daytona and Austin Dillon hasn't won yet, that's who I think grabs the last spot with a walk-off win again, 2 years in a row.
And I'll add in there too, just real quick. It's funny that you brought that up because if you look back at the Daytona 500, who made the mistake, right? And when it came down to the end of that race, it was Richard Childress, their team. Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon were in perfect position to win that race, and they messed up. And we're going back to the same track that they messed up. And you think they're going to let that happen again? If it comes down to the end, no, they're not gonna take, try to plan out and try to, kind of work out the kind of strategy they did, because they were in position. And for them having been in position earlier this year, I don't think that they're going to let that mistake happen again. So it wouldn't be surprising if Austin Dillon is able to pull it off this year with the help from Kyle Busch, or even just on his own like he did last year. Although he did have Tyler Reddick.
Well, he did have a wall of rain that NASCAR couldn't see
Yeah,
as well.
I was about to
So,
say that.
I mean,
it wasn't just Reddick.
Are we planning on 30 cars getting wrecked here in turn 1
Yeah,
again?
there was also that was the other thing about the races. There was like 5 cars running at the end. So
half of them were Rick Ware racing cars. So
can we talk about how Justin Haley really should have made the playoffs?
Yeah, I think so. But let's move on.
So my 2 is going to be Bubba, and I think Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott's going to make up the points. He gained like 24 or 20 this past week. All he has to do is gain 10 the next 4. So Chase Elliott's going to get the stage points at the road courses. He's going to probably finish top 5, top 10 at both road courses, setting him up to be within striking distance at Daytona. And Chase Elliott typically is there towards the end of the races at the super speedways. He might wreck at the end, but he's usually there towards the end. He's never an early DNF at the super speedways. Now on to our championship picks. We determined this before the show who would go first, and Steve is the lucky guy that gets to pick his championship 4 and his champion.
Yeah, so first of all, lucky me, never get to go first, it seems like. So I'll take a win for once here. Reluctantly, didn't go with Cody Ware or Josh Bilicki. I really thought about it long and hard, but just just couldn't see those guys getting in the playoffs. But no, the guy actually, we're talking about down years last year and kind of a resurgence. We can talk about that with Martin Truex Jr. Didn't win any races last year and didn't make the playoffs even last year. But now this year, this is the Martin Truex we're used to seeing. I pulled up some stats from the last, what are we, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 races. So these are the finishes from the Coke 600 to last weekend at Richmond. So third at Charlotte, fifth at Gateway, a win at Sonoma, second at Nashville, and then 32nd Chicago, 29th Atlanta. So a couple bad weeks in a row, but then a win at Loudon, a win at third at Pocono should have been a win, and then seventh at Richmond, and had great speed all day. So that team, he's found the chemistry with him and James Small, his crew chief. And that team, when they get on a roll, there's no stopping that 19 team. And they have some great tracks in the playoffs, and they're racking up playoff points as they go too. So I think Martin Truex wins his second championship. Don't know if he's coming back next year, but if he wins a championship, I think it'd be one hell of a way to go out.
All right. I'm going William Byron. William Byron's got the playoff points right now. He's sitting third in points, has a chance. He's still got a chance at that regular season championship to give him 15 more playoff points. And he is the winner at Phoenix in the spring. So let's listen. William Byron's having a career year. There's no reason to doubt what him and Rudy Fugle are doing. He's doubled his career win total in one season. And if anyone's going to put that 24 back into the championship circle, it's going to be William Byron. So, yeah, you got to give me William Byron this season as your 2023 NASCAR Cup Series champion.
See, I almost picked Byron. I was really thinking about it at first because while he does have 4 wins, we see this from William Byron every year. And this is where I get reluctant about William Byron is he starts off the year great and racks off a couple wins, but then during the summer months leading into the playoffs just completely dies off. Now I know he had a win in Atlanta a few weeks ago, but of course that was because the rain was coming and anything goes at Atlanta now. But over his last couple stretches of races, 14th at Sonoma, he had a 13th at Chicago, 24th Loudon, 14th Pocono, and 21st Richmond. So we're talking about teams getting hot at the right time. The teams can get cold at the wrong time too. And with these couple races before the playoffs, you don't want to see the 2014 get cold because then that's usually where they fall apart into the playoffs.
Well, last year, surprisingly, they did fall off before the playoffs and didn't have a top 10 for a while, and then came out firing in the playoffs. It was like night and day when the playoffs started for William Byron and the 2014 team. Honestly, they had a real shot at making the championship for last year, the way they ran in the playoffs. So I think they have the ability to do that again this season. And if they get hot in the playoffs, they've shown that when they're hot, they are the car to beat in the field. All right, now on to Britt.
So I'll give you my 4. All right. I've been racking my brain for him. Well, first of all, Martin Truex, he's just been killing it this year. No matter where we go, he's up there. He's competing every style of track, every size track. He's there. Just that's if Steve hadn't have taken him, then he's the odds-on favorite. And then I'll go with Joey. Not biased obviously, but also he's always there in the final 4. Like he's almost I can't remember the last time he wasn't because I have a terrible memory. He probably wasn't like 2 years ago or something. But
Well, that
he's
year he
always
missed the playoffs, but okay.
Okay.
And he missed
whatever.
it. He missed it 2 years ago.
Okay, 2 years ago. Well, you see him consistently in the Final 4. He finds a way. Like this has been a down year for Ford as a whole, but he's still found a way to be up there. So I'll throw him in there. I think Brad Keselowski gets into the Final 4 because of the consistency, and Keselowski has championship pedigree. He knows what it takes and how to put together a good playoff run. So I think that Brad gets in, and also sidebar, I just like to give RFK their flowers here because they have been immaculate this year compared to what they have been, and I'm sure Wes will talk about that later on with whoever he chooses. But yeah, so Brad's my third spot, and then my champion, who is the fourth person I'm here to mention, the bane of my existence, Denny Hamlin, because he's been up there. He's been contending for wins. Um, Not everyone likes him. I personally don't like him, but I can respect what he does on the track. Um, as just hard aggressive racing, and it's not like he's done anything that we haven't seen before. So he may be making enemies at the wrong time, but I think he's been incredibly consistent. He's a guy that you don't see DNF that often, so that's going to be huge. And the playoff points that he has stored up too. He's third in playoff points right now, so he has the consistency. He makes it to the final four really consistently, and once you're in the final four, it's anything goes. You could win a championship from just being there when everyone else wrecks. So as much as I don't want to say that Denny Hamlin is my championship pick, he's the pick because he's just a really consistent guy that I think can get there in the end.
I'll put $10 down that say that a pit road penalty will take him out of the championship.
I got you on record for that one.
All right, Wes. Who's the fourth champion here?
So I feel like there's a lot of good contenders this year that have had flashes of moments where you could consider them as a threat to win the championship. But I'm looking at a guy that we haven't really talked a lot about as being a not really a contender for wins over the past couple years. I guess his last win probably came in 2021 if you're looking at non-points paying races. And I think that was at Talladega. I think he only had one win that season. But he's a guy that has really, I feel like in terms of this year, I feel like we're talking about him maybe 3 times more than we did last year. And that's a pretty impressive stat to be able to say. A guy that really has turned the tables, especially in the past few weeks, and a guy that I feel like is building momentum with his team, a team that he bought a little bit of stake into and now is his own, and that's Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski has really, really had an incredible talent. And he's really been able to show a lot of his capabilities as not only a team owner, but as a driver himself. I mean, he's already got more top tens, more top fives. He's led more laps than last season. His own driver, Chris Buescher, has been just on top of it. He's been an incredible contender week in and week out. We haven't really talked about Fords, especially the first half of the year, as being as good as they have been in years past. But to be honest, I feel like we're really seeing some of these guys, especially like Brad, show up and have speed week in and week out. I mean, he almost won Richmond. He almost won the championship a couple years ago in his, I guess, his last tenure with Penske, or the year before, one of the two. But Brad is just an incredible talent. I really think that there is something there that could shine, especially the second half of the season. And Britt mentioned it earlier. There is a quality and an aggression to Brad when it comes to making the championship. He's got a will. He's got a really good mindset, and I feel like that's something to be to show when it comes to a championship contender. Obviously, he's not in the fastest car. He's not with the fastest team, but his consistency has been impressive. And I think that consistency is a very, very important key to getting into the later stages of the championship, especially the playoffs, but to make it all the way to the championship race. Wins are important too, but consistency week in and week out can get you really far. And I feel like Brad's going to be a guy that we're going to have to keep our eye on.
He does have previous Final Four experience too from a few times. So, I mean, and look at last year. Look at Chase Briscoe. I mean, had that one win in Phoenix, but then he was close to being in the championship four just by pointing his way through the playoffs. So, Brad's definitely someone to watch. I don't think it gets all the way to the Final Four, but We'll see.
Yeah, you got
I don't
some
know.
interesting takes here.
We'll find out. I mean, people thought Kyle Larson had a runaway championship last year, and that didn't happen. You know, it's he didn't even make the Final Four. And I feel like every year we say, "Oh, the guy that's won the regular season championship, oh, he's a lock for the Final Four." And then we see Kevin Harvick not make it. We see Kyle Larson not make it. So who's to say that Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Bell, Harvick? Who's to say these guys don't even make the final 8? We'll find out.
Yeah, it's really a war of attrition when it comes to these playoffs. The wackiest things happen. Just you'll have mechanical failures out of nowhere. You'll have just rivalries develop and guys will take each other out. We won't see anybody, go full throttle around the wall this season without penalty. But I don't know, Brad Keselowski, I don't see him making it past the round of 12. Just not. He's consistent, but he's just not. He doesn't have that raw speed week in and week out. I don't see it from them.
Yeah, but see,
You
that's
can
the
name
thing.
I can name 8 drivers right now that would easily be in over Brad into the round of 8.
That's the thing. He doesn't have the raw speed, but the thing is, you mentioned it yourself. There's a lot of failures, just a lot of wacky things that happen during the playoffs. If you can just avoid that, you don't have to be the fastest car, and you could make the Final Four just from playing it right, playing your cards right. You don't have to have the best hand to make it to the Final Four. You have to play it right. You have to not have a terrible race. I'll take an entire playoff worth of top tens over a win here and then 30th place finishes and then having to fight my way back up the next round and then so like I get it, and he doesn't have the point cushion because he doesn't have any playoff points. I think he only has 3 or something.
Yeah.
But I think just he doesn't have any room for mistakes, and I think that will drive him you'll have to. He's like, yeah, I've got to race a perfect race every week if I want to make it, as opposed to you can get in that mindset if you're one of the guys with 33 playoff points. They don't intentionally do it, but subconsciously you can get to that point where it's like, oh yeah, you blow an engine or something, you're like, oh yeah, whatever, we got the points cushion. I'm still above the cut line, and then all of a sudden, driver mistake happens the next week, and you're back in like 20th or something, and you're fighting for your life. So it's all about mindset and getting it right. And I think that Brad, with the way that RFK's been on an upward trajectory this year, I think that will help a lot as well.
And I'll only add to that just with one thing real quick. I mean, if you look at last year, how many people even first put Chase Briscoe in making the final or the round of 8? And how many people thought, I mean, there was a chance Chase Briscoe almost made the championship race, going to the race in which he won at earlier in the season. We almost saw Chase Briscoe win the championship last year, and I'm pretty sure, and there was no upward trajectory last year with Stewart-Haas Racing. So that's a reason you can't rule out a guy like Brad. You can't rule out a guy like, if you want to say Chris Buescher too, you could throw some of these guys.
I take
that are
Buescher
back
over
there.
Brad.
Yeah, Buescher's been great this year. He could make the Final Four. It's
I'm
just the
taking Brad
experience. I feel like at
all
the
day.
top,
No,
Brad's got the experience.
Buescher
He's
doesn't
got
have enough
the-
experience.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna-
that's just right.
I would put money on Buescher finishing ahead of Brad in the points this season.
That's why we play the game.
I think Brad has the playoff experience that Buescher doesn't have yet, can get, but doesn't have it yet. Even looking back at last year, all it takes is 1 or 2 bad races. Look at Kyle Busch. Only 1 win last year, but had a really good season. Engine blow up at Darlington, engine blow up at Bristol, and he's out in the first round. So all it takes is 1 bad race, 2 bad races, and then we could be talking about one of these guys, even like your Martin Truex, your William Byrons, your Denny Hamlins, a couple bad races, and those guys could even be out in the first round too.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch. Can't wait to talk about it more in the weeks coming up, and when we do get to these playoffs. But I think that's gonna wrap up our first episode back here on the Foreign Field podcast. I am so excited, ready for what we can get done here. Can't wait to watch Michigan here, see how the playoff bubble looks next week. We'll get into it more next week and a lot more with the Foreign Field podcast. We'll see you next week. For Steve, Wes, Britt, I'm Dom. Enjoy the races. We'll see you next week.